Good morning from a very pleasant Inverness. We have a nice bright morning here, pretty good conditions for running. I'm going to do the River Ness 10K in a bit. The Loch Ness Marathon is also happening today. They've already gone off, I think, and we'll all be finishing in the centre of town in a little while. The 10K doesn't start till 10:30, which is a very civilised start time. So it's a nice relaxed morning, having some breakfast and just getting myself ready. I've got a few bits of gear to test today. Going to be running in the Nike Alphafly 3. I haven't used these in anger in a race, I think, since early on in the year. Since then, some other shoes have come out and kind of pushed the Alphafly down my rankings, especially the Asics Metaspeed Sky Paris, but it is an amazing shoe. I want to bring it back out again and kind of remind myself of that. I used it for a workout on Wednesday and brought it out again today to try and give it a really good hard run out and see how I feel with it over 10K. In terms of my own personal goals today, the aim is to run as fast as I can. I'd love to get a PB. My PB is I think 32:32. It's quite a good course here, the River Ness 10K, in terms of kind of elevation. You've got a little bit of downhill in the middle at a good point, which and it's overall a net downhill by about kind of 30-40 meters. So it's a fast course for sure, and the conditions look good today. So hopefully be able to run fast. But I am training through this race. Basically, the idea is that I've got bigger races to come. It's early on in the Valencia block, so I've done a full week's training. I've not tapered at all, but hopefully should still be pretty fresh because I'm at the start of marathon training. I'll be able to run a fast time. So Alphafly 3 on the feet, along with my unicorn socks, my favourite socks. Got the Run Rabbit tights, half tights on. These are the ones with lots of pockets. I think they're called the Speedsters or maybe the Shredsters. Basically, they're kind of in between their trail and their road racing shorts. They're amazing. They're probably the shorts I'm going to use for the Valencia Marathon. They've got great pockets, nice, comfortable half tights for long distances. Not carrying anything today really, apart from a watch, which we'll talk about in a second. But I want to use them in a race. And then I've got a Varga hat, influenced by all the people who have these hats. I bought one of these at the expo yesterday because I'm going to wear a hat today. And then in terms of watches, I'm going to ride deep with 3 watches today, 2 on the wrist. I've got the Apple Watch Ultra 2 on one wrist in the black colour, and then the Apple Watch Series 10 on the other wrist, basically just checking their heart rate, GPS accuracy, see how they fare in a race like today. And the control watch is the Garmin Fenix 8, which I'm going to connect to a heart rate monitor and pop into my into the waistband on the running shorts just to test the heart rate, so I can see if the Apple Watches are on point. They've been really good in terms of heart accuracy until this week, and indeed when I came up to Scotland and it was much colder conditions, and then heart rate from optical sensors just tends to not be quite so good, so they're a bit all over the place in my run yesterday, so we'll see if they're okay in the race today. But GPS should be pretty good today on quite an open course, I think. And like I say, it's a pretty good one. So I think we start with 2 or 3K, something like that, away from the city, running slightly undulating terrain. I think maybe it's probably a slight uphill that first 3K, then you get a nice downhill back towards the city. I think it levels out a bit along the river as you come into the finish, which is the same finish as the Loch Ness Marathon. Big inflatable Nessie there, so it'd be good to go through that, finish up, have a bit of a recovery, and then watch the marathon runners come in a little bit later. So all done, I'm back at the hotel after running the River Ness 10K at the Loch Ness Marathon Festival. It went very, very well, it's fair to say. I ran a 31:33, which would be almost a minute PB. It's a friendly course, that's one thing to say right at the start here. It's a nice downhill race. It's unbelievably fast race. We had perfect conditions today as well, where there was not really a breath of wind, really good temperature, very clear, and lots of people to run with the whole way. I managed to stay in the group the whole way. Nice bunch finish, sprint finish down the River Ness as well in the centre of town. So yeah, it's a brilliant run to do if you want to go run a fast time. And I'm going to enjoy the fact I've run my fastest 10K by a long way. It goes on Power 10 as a PB. I think I'll probably try and do one on the flat at some point and go sub 32. But obviously it went a long way sub 32 today, so that's really pleasing. Good sign of my shape. Like the first 3K are actually probably just a mild uphill overall. There's a little bit of up and down, and then the next couple of K are very steep downhill and very enjoyable. You pound down towards town, and it kind of levels out by the river again. And I was basically running about 3:10, 3:11 on the kind of flatter or uphill Ks throughout, and then picked up a lot of time on those 2 downhills to log what is a much faster time than I expected. The plan here was to come and have a really good time at this 10K, train hard the week before, which I did, a double Wednesday, and go out and see what I could run on legs that are just starting marathon training. And yeah, it was great results. Brilliant event all round as well. Very well organised, really nice finish. You kind of start out in some, the outskirts of Inverness. There's a few nice country lanes, and then you're hitting the city centre with a bit of the crowd support pulling you in those last couple of Ks. So actually see the finish at around the 8K mark on the other side of the river. You've got to go up and cross a bridge. And in the marathon, I remember I did the marathon, that was quite tough because you're seeing the finish, but you've got to go away from it for a bit. But in the 10K, actually, it was really good. It gave me a big burst of motivation. You've got a couple of K here, get over the bridge, and it's just a 1K to the finish. So really pleased how the race went. Then had time to get changed and go watch the marathon finish, which was amazing as well. So I ran a 2:19 here today in the marathon, and big shout out to Rachel Boswell, finishing second in the women's race. Well done, Rachel. So I do want to come back and run that marathon because it is an amazing course, and this would be in the best conditions to do it in, actually. Hopefully it won't rain next year if I do come back. Certainly highly recommended both races. River Ness 10K, you want to go run a fast time, it's a great one to do it at, and if you want to go and do a very scenic marathon that has a rare combination of incredible scenery for like 35, 40k almost, and then you have a nice city centre finish, so you get that kind of crowd support at the end. It's a really good one, the Loch Ness Marathon. Then, in terms of the gear I was using today, so might as well start with the Nike Alphafly 3. An amazing running shoe, so one that I wanted to run in and race in because it's not been one we've talked about actually a load on the channel, surprisingly. Like right at the start of the year, I did our review. I said it's the best carbon plate racing shoe out there, the one I expected to do all my races in this year, my big races, and then the Asics Meta Speed Sky Paris came out, and I just liked it more. And that's the shoe I ran my London Marathon PB in. I really like the Asics, but the Alphafly still deserves its dues as an amazing racing shoe. It is so bouncy, it is so fast, it turns over really well. I really like the transition on the Alphafly 3 with the continuous midsole. I know some people still prefer the Alphafly 1, but this is an unbelievably fast shoe for sure. Great for today when you hit like a downhill section in a big bouncy shoe like this, like where the extra value you get from this bounce certainly is worthwhile compared to even things like the Asics or the On Cloud Boom Strike, which I really liked as well, which are slightly firmer feeling, lighter shoes that turn over really well, which is why I like them so much for my kind of natural stride, which is a very high cadence style with not a very long stride length, but hitting a downhill shoe like this is perfect, and yeah, it was unbelievably quick. So certainly still up there. The level of carbon shoes these days is so good, and we talk about like tiers maybe and that kind of thing, but really there's just a whole load of amazing carbon shoes that if they are the ones that you like running in and you like the feel of them, then they will be the best racing shoes for you. It's almost like we've got to the stage of carbon shoes where we have been with running shoes in general, which was like the best advice is just to go and find one that you like the feel of, and then that is the right shoe for you. With carbon shoes for a while there was, I think, a very clear faster shoe out there. The Nike early on was just completely dominant, and then now it's much more of a level playing field. Like, I haven't tried the Adios Pro Evo 1, that might take things up another level. I think we're going to see some super lightweight shoes coming out in the coming years that hopefully won't become too restricted. That's a little bit my fear now with carbon shoes. We're going to have this next level of shoes that are kind of targeted at elites and have ridiculous price tags and actually start to make all of us normal runners start to feel a little bit like second-class citizens with like the second best shoe in a brand's rage, which was never really the case. People raced in racing flats, the same ones that we were using as normal runners, and I think that should still be the case. There shouldn't be this band of £500 shoes, but I'm hoping that's not going to happen. I don't think it is. Maybe it won't, but either way, there's still going to be amazing racing shoes available, and the Alphafly 3 is certainly one of them. Now onto the watches. So I had two Apple Watches on my wrist today and the Garmin Fenix 8 in my waist belt, which is connected to the Polar H10 heart rate monitor. So basically I was checking the Apple Watch's heart rate against the Garmin's. Actually the Garmin's GPS was also spectacular from in my waistband, so I've also used that as well. So looking at the actual overall pacing, the distance, so it comes to GPS, they were great, the watches. And this is what you get with Apple Watches. I do think they are very accurate now. They're around 10k. The Apple Watch Series 10 was a bit short. The Apple Watch Ultra was a bit more in line with the Garmin Fenix 8 and had the same kind of splits. However, this doesn't tell the whole story. So it's not just about the actual splits you see on Strava and the overall distance. It's about pacing. And I think this is where the Apple Watch still has a bit of a problem with its native app because I've talked about this in other videos. The split pace on the Apple Watch is done in a different way or is simply incorrect, in my opinion. So, for example, today, last 3k, so in the first half of the race, I wasn't looking at my watch too much. I don't tend to use my watch too much in the first half of races, just running. But once I'm, within sight of my goal, I start doing the maths and work out what I need to run per kilometre to hit a goal kind of thing. And that's when I look at the split pace for that exact kilometre I'm on. And that's what I use, I pace it kilometre by kilometre. So for 8, 9, 10 kilometres today, or 7, 8, 9, going into the 10th to finish, I needed to run a certain pace. And I was looking at the watch and I was running it, for example, and the Apple Watch at the end of a kilometre would get the pacing right, would have the same split as the Garmin, but during that kilometre it would read too high, the split pace. So going through the 7k marker, I'll have just run a 310k, whatever it is, and I'll be maintaining that pace. And the Garmin will show that my next split pace, for kilometre 7 to 8, will be around 310 per k. The Apple Watch, both of them will jump to 345 a k and then gradually work their way down over the course of the kilometre to match up to the Garmin. So the actual overall result looks the same and is correct, but you cannot use it to pace that kilometre because it's too slow. And it's a problem that I've had ever since they added split pace to the native app. And it doesn't happen on third-party apps on the Apple Watch. So if you use the U-Race app or the Work Outdoors app, the two apps I probably use the most, you'll get the same split pace as you get on the Garmin, and the one that the accurate one basically. And that means you can use it to pace. So normally I do use third-party apps because of that, because I use a split pace so much if I'm doing any kind of session. So yeah, it's just basically quite annoying. And in a race, that is a problem because you don't know the pace you're running for that. You are running it. It's not like I changed my pace based on the Apple Watch, but it was frustrating. But because I know it does that as well. If I just look down and went, I've just slowed down this guy, I need to kick on, you're wasting energy to get back to a pace you were already running. So that is an annoyance. It's probably a fairly minor annoyance in the grand scheme of things, but I just don't know why it happens and why it doesn't happen on third-party apps, and I would like it to be fixed. But Same time, there are loads of great third-party apps, which I would normally use probably. U-Race is an app I often use for racing on the Apple Watch because you can correct the distance as you go past markers, which I do like a lot. Not that I really needed to today because the GPS was pretty much spot on all these watches. Slightly less good on the Apple Watch Series 10, but all in all, pretty accurate across the board. And looking at the heart rate of the watches, the Apple Watches did really well actually. I did think they might struggle today. It was a slightly cold day. Sometimes optical heart rate sensors don't work as well, but no, they were really on point throughout the race. A little bit of not quite perfect reading at the start of the race when it was actually quite hard in general because I had to start the 3 watches and there's no precision start on the Apple Watch 10, which is a big loss in that native app mode. You can get it again in third-party apps, but they read in line with the heart rate sensor pretty much the whole way. The last, I'd say, like 5 minutes, the Apple Watch Ultra was slightly higher than the heart rate sensor in the watches, but not too much. And the overall averages all looked pretty good. So heart rate was really good on both watches today. And happy to report that. And actually, it's interesting. I was looking at the elevation because it was quite an interesting elevation course. So general broad agreement across the watches in terms of the elevation I ran. Like the Apple Watch 10 seemed to have the elevation just point a little bit higher than the other 2 watches throughout. And there was one slightly interesting little bump from the Apple Watch Ultra 2, which jumped up a little hill, a phantom hill. I did not climb a little hill at that point of the race, but all in all, yeah, all looks pretty good on the stats wise. Like the only real problem I have, like I say, is that split pacing thing, but heart rate was really good. Overall GPS tracks look really good, just slightly less good on the Series 10, like something like they cut a roundabout, but for the most part, pretty much exactly the same. And great performances from the watches all around for sure. And just a really fun race all around. Really enjoyed it. I like the Ness medal. I really like watching the marathon people come in. It's a really fun event, and I really enjoyed Inverness actually in general as well. Like I didn't stay in Inverness when I ran the Loch Ness Marathon. I stayed out on the loch, and being in the city centre, it's really nice. There's some lovely running around here actually along the river and onto the Ness Islands and stuff like that. So very happy all around. A great Sunday.